So we've got everything, so it'll come in now, and we'll go to session start, and so this is basically how everything actually appears in Logic, and because the way it exports it, I always put the track number on, so we've actually got it as it appears in the Garageband session or the Logic session. If you notice, it goes from start to finish. Now, I mentioned previously about the audio, about importing the MIDI as well, so if we just have a quick look at this Logic now. So I've got the drums. The other thing I need to think about is working out what the tempo is, and so I'm just going to go again. I'm going to import MIDI, and it's going to be in audio tracks because this is where everything went, and it says Garageband. This is the window it comes up with, the MIDI import options. It'll say new tracks as an instrument file. I'm going to say keep it as an instrument track because I'm going to put an instrument plugin on that. The other options I'm going to bring in as well, the other options I'm going to tick on this is I'm going to tick at the start. I'm also going to import the tempo map. So what that does then is, because I'm importing the MIDI file, it'll bring in the tempo and it'll adjust it from 120 up to 125, and you can see here this is then the audio clips for the drums. This is the MIDI files for the drums. I think there was an issue with the MIDI drums from what I remember, is that when I joined them I ended up with some dead space here, and that's what happens. I think I had to go back through, and the next thing I want to do then is, so I've got all the sessions, I'm just going to select everything, Control Command up, and that brings everything in. If I double click on one of the files and press Option F or Alt F, that'll give me a vertical zoom so I can see everything. So this is the overall view of it. I got my drum tracks here. The next thing I want to do is I want to organize it as I'd normally have it. So everything is roughly on the same kind of point of view. Everything's on roughly about where I'd like to see it. I mean, I normally have the drums at the top, vocals at the bottom, and any of my mix processing will go beneath that. So then what I have is I've got this section here, which I think is a drum effect from what I remember. If I just play a little bit of this. So the other thing I actually did, I exported all the track off as clean audio, so there's no effects, no plugin processing. From what I remember, there wasn't really that much already. I think they overcommitted most of the guitar effects and sounds to the recordings. And so then what I'd have is I'd probably move these drum tracks up to the top. So I've got the bounce drum file here. We've got a bit of a classic stack, which I think is bass. That's the guitar one. So this is the bass here. So then the bass will come up above this guitar, and then the next thing that I've got is what I looked at then doing is I tried to group anything that looked like they were sections together, so that all these were like the choruses. So I select all them, I'm just going to move them down to the bottom, and then I've almost got the layout how I'd like it. So I've got drums, then bass, like a section that goes all the way through, like a guitar following the bass, and then I've got these chorus guitars, and then these vocals. And from what I remember as well, I thought these were guitars originally because it says audio recorder. I wasn't sure, and so then if I just quickly close this and do, here's one I made earlier, B-side, and I'll show you how it looks when I actually bring all the processing in and the arrangement. From what we have now, this view for Pro Tools, what I've actually sorted out as well. There's like the latest, I think one of the 2020 version of Pro Tools introduced track folders, and what this meant is I can actually route my tracks and actually compress them down. In Logic, it's called summing stacks, or track stacks. I use this quite a lot now, so I can group all these in here. So I've got all my drum sections in here. I've got the bass tracks in here. All the guitar, like the verse guitars, then underneath. Just take all the clips and the automation off, and then I've got some chorus guitar parts, and you see they're all grouped. Main vocals, and so it's like there's 18 tracks, and I've just grouped them off into the sections that I'd normally have it. So let's have a look at the beginning with the drums. So you probably notice, if we just open up this folder, what we've got here now is with the MIDI track, I've actually routed out the audio from the original drums. So I'm just going to play you what we had originally for the drums. This is how it was exported out without any processing done. automation is off. Sounds pretty good. It sounds pretty good. The main thing is obviously like the volume. I've only got one track, and this is one of the reasons why I exported out the MIDI as well. So then what I could do is I'm using Steven Slate Drums, and I can actually I can construct a kit, which I think I've done. I've added a couple of extra kick drum sounds to it. So I've got, let's take the solo off. So I've got a kick drum. It's quite a lively one, another lively one, and another quite lively one. Interesting. And then there's 2 snare samples. And this is all. So what happens is, if I go onto the mixer, I've got these outputs underneath here, and that's actually what this lets me do is I can route my kicks out to one auxiliary tracks. I can do the same for the snares. So I've got 3 snare tracks, and then all my toms and a couple other bits and pieces. Individual tracks can go out. So I think I've got close mic cymbals for like ride, China, and splashes all go to one stereo auxiliary, which I think is actually on the plugin channel. And then I've got overhead mics and room mics. There's like a routing section, so bleed level and bleed routing. I can actually route those to. I can route those into the outputs and the auxes as well. So this is where like the plugins come in. If you'd notice on the inputs, I've got input plugin, and I can actually set up I've got 9, 10, 11. So this is where like the mono 9, mono 10 is actually coming from the plugin as an aux track. So now if I just solo these drums, and I'm just going to take off the 2 Logic sessions here. So this is the these are like the Logic drums that came in. So this is just now the MIDI files. And the other thing I'm going to do as well is I'm just going to mute and bypass any console automation as well. So I've got console 1 set up. I got console 1 set up, which I use quite a bit. I think I'm using American Class A, all API. So I'm pretending I'm on an API desk for the drums. Just about like it. No other reason. Quite liked it. So this is what the drums sound like once I've kind of constructed it and gone in through Pro Tools and like through Steven Slate Drums. And this is the MIDI drum sound that I made. So we've got quite a nice dry sound to it, and then we've also got this room sound, which I quite liked. And I actually kept the original drums on top as well. I used that almost like a parallel sound. And let's just import all the other settings as well. So then what I've done is I've gone through and I've just looked at the kick drum, and that's gone to 1 track, so I could solo that. And then the snare. Tom. There's not much that happens with the toms, and then I'll just bring these room mics in. So that's my overall sound for the drums. It sounds a bit strange on its own. I think that I think the overall volume for the overall volume for the room mic, the Logic drum was actually quite low down in the mix. And then the final thing that we had was this drum effects sound, which was like almost like a panning sort of sound. So just show you what that sounded like on its own. So you see it's like panning. I quite like that movement. I actually quite left it. What I actually ended up doing with that is I just filtered off a bit of the low end, a bit off the high end, and I just used it to kind of push through the middle section of the EQ. And that actually drops out, I think it's going through in the verses and drops out for the chorus. Because I've played around and messed around with this session now, I'm just going to go back into the B-side version. And what are we on? B-side mix 1. And we're going to go session file backups. And I'm just going to change this view to list. because I've messed around with a few bits and pieces, what I want to do is I just want to go back, say about, I don't know, half an hour, and I'm just going to match all the tracks, and all I'm going to do is do not import, change the settings, nothing, and I'm just going to bring back the volume automation, mainly for the Logic drums and maybe the drum effects, just to check the levels of what they were in the mix. Let's go through, and there we are. So on their own, like the drums, they're quite edgy. We've got like a parallel drum compressor, which I normally have, and the other thing that I've done is I'll come back to the core, what I've done for the chorus. So what I've looked at doing is trying to make the chorus like a bit bigger and a bit fuller. So that's more or less the drums for the time being. Original drums, and I've gone through and I've augmented the drums with Steven Slate Drums. I really like it. It sounds really, really cool. And the other thing is I've got a room mic, which I'm using Space. And I was going through and just cycling through some different room sounds. The one that I basically is like, on the day, this is one I thought sounded the nicest. So then if I went here and I changed all these to pre-fade, we can listen to what this sounds on its own. So this is Space is a convolution reverb that Avid make, and it's basically, there's no dry signal, so this is just what the room mics sound like. So it's like adding that into the mix of the overall drums. So bring the so this will be the drums without the reverb. And then I've also got on the kick and just on the snare, I've got a plate which is Soundtoys little plate. Really, really like it. I think it's actually more or less the default settings apart from the mod switch turned on. And that's add that in as well. Oh, and I've high passed a little bit. I've also high passed a little bit at the low end there. Take those two off. The next section that we looked at was the bass. The bass sound on its own, when I actually opened it up, I really, really like the sound of it. This is without any plugins. I'm not doing like a ton of stuff on this bass track, so I'm just gonna. So that's the bass. What I really liked about this is you've got that little bit of dirt and distortion and grit that I've looked at a little bit before. And all I've looked to do, so again, I'm now using a Neve channel, which is like a Neve 1073, I think, and I'm boosting quite a lot of the high end, and there's quite a bit of the low end bump, so it's almost like a scoop. And I've done a previous video about mixing bass and drums together, and it's the same kind of thing. I'm boosting a lot of the trebly stuff because as soon as I bring in the guitars, that's going to overpower that and take it out. So if you hear, like when I take the EQ off, it almost sounds a bit woolly. It adds a bit more, basically adds a tiny bit more bite, and then I'm running that through. The next section is UAD Teletronic Silk. This is LA2A, and again, I love this on bass. It's quite a slow. It's like an opto compressor, which is quite slow. And it's a very, very slow compressor, but it adds a lot. I'm using compressors more for character and vibe rather than so much like taming transients. And then there's a drive section here, which is basically emulating a Neve mixing desk, and I'm just kind of pushing that a bit just to get over, just an overall vibe of that. So again, so I'm making that a little bit more exciting. So then after that, the next thing I'm doing is adding more EQ. So then I'm going into Pultec. So we have the 60 Hertz, we're bumping 60 Hertz and cutting 60 Hertz. And then they're also like boosting 5K. I'll go extreme on this just so you can hear what it sounds like. And again, I'm usually, for bass, I'm usually somewhere between 3, 4, and 5. And as I'm auditioning stuff, I'll normally be like, I'll look which one I think is having the most impact. That's where that'll vary from bass to bass. In this, because it's quite aggressive, 5K works, sometimes 3K works. It doesn't really matter. No attenuation and nothing else happens. With the Pultec, I think I've mentioned before, what I really like about it is it almost, you don't really notice that it's being like it's really working or anything's really happening until you bypass it. It's like, oh, you actually miss what it's doing. So it adds a bit of vibe and other, like feeling to it. So then after that, 1176, nothing really much to say, like shout home about this. I'm probably looking at like 3 dB cut. So attack is on 3, release is on 7. That's normally more or less how that's more or less my like go-to setting for most 1176 stuff. If I'm in Rockfield, I use that setting as well. Sometimes I might change attack to 1, so it's super fast. Like it's like fast. I think it's fastest, slowest attack, fastest release, but it's really really quick, and it's just to catch a couple of bits. And I'm using it again just for more about the harmonic content that the 1176 brings. It just brings something out and it makes the bass sound nice. Off. So it's making it a bit fuller. I think there's like less transients on there. And so again, the final thing then is like, well, I compressed it, I've EQ'd it. I might then look at doing some like sub bass or some I use R bass quite a bit. So this is like a sub frequency harmonic generator. It's also really really good on kick drum. I think there's a setting called Big Bottoms that really, really works. I find that 80 is normally pretty good. I think it's Bombastic or Basic setup or something like that. Let's have a look. It'll probably be the basic setup. I'll bring this. And then I'll just change gain. I'll dial the gain back a little bit to where it's not clipping. So it's 3.1. So that's why. So down 3.1 is where it's sort of stopped clipping. It's a bit under control. And then that'll go into Bass Rider. So Bass Rider is really useful. So what Bass Rider does is you set a target volume for the signal and it'll automate tracks up and down. So whereas compressors will only just catch like peaks and troughs and everything, the Bass Rider will set a level so it'll make it a bit more even and the bass kind of a bit more flow a little bit better. I quite like, again, the reason I'm using it, I've got a fast response and quite high sensitivity, and I quite like it just to even out some of the sounds. I mean, it's been really, really well played, so it's not too bad. But again, all of this, it's probably like there's little tweaks on every single thing. I'm not doing massive amounts of adjustments if like one by one, but as they all add up, it might make a bit more of a difference. If I press Shift A, that'll bypass everything, and you can hear the difference between before and after. And then we've also got let's bring in the drums again. So show you again the difference now between where the bass is after the effects are on, of what the bass was like before we had the effects, and the final product afterwards. So just take them off. And that's what the track is doing.